Welcome to the space between heaven on earth. This is a companion podcast to Awakening Heaven on Earth, created as a space for reflection, conversation, and lived experience. Here, we enter the pause between knowing and becoming, between insight and embodiment, between heaven and earth. These conversations are not about answers or conclusions. They are about presence, about listening, about reasoning together, about meeting one another honestly in the unfolding journey of awakening. I'm your host, Sherri Keys. Again, welcome and thank you for entering the space between with us. Good morning and welcome to this edition of The Space Between. I'm your host, Sherri Keys. And in our last episode, we explored what we called the turning point. Those moments in life when our understanding of the world begins to shift. And today we're exploring what often follows that specific moment. And we're going to call this episode The Awakening Within. It's important to note, I think, that awakening is not usually a single dramatic event. More often, it's a gradual process, a growing awareness that begins to shape how we see ourselves, how we relate to other people, and how we experience life. And again, I'm grateful to be joined this morning by my son, Joel, my dear friends, Dermody and Sherri Keys, as we explore what this inner awakening can look like in our lives. So before we go into the reflection questions, I just want to take a few moments and ask each one of you, when you hear the phrase, the awakening within, what does that mean to you personally?
So for me, awakening has felt less like discovering something new and more like remembering something I've been overlooking or something that's always been there. So it's just a remembering more than it is truly being something brand new.
For me, it's becoming more aware, not just of your physical surroundings, but of your spiritual surroundings that are always here, just not always aware to it.
For me, it's more like introducing myself to myself, becoming more in tune to who I am as a person. So that's what that means to me.
I love that. Introducing myself to myself. You know, for me, it's become the fact that I always thought that I was separate from God. And that the awakening has been that I am God. Now, that'll shock some people to say that, because they would consider that blasphemy and heresy in their current beliefs. But the fact is that Jesus himself told us, ye are gods. And it's recognizing that the very essence of God, the source, is my very essence. And it's who I truly am. It's not, my ego is not who I truly am. That's a false identity. And I think beyond that, it's not only recognizing that within myself, as Sherri said, introducing myself to myself, it's then turning and being able to see and recognize that in everybody else. That's been a significant awakening for me, is not only feeling it and seeing it within myself, but recognizing that all of us have, and that's who all of us are. We're all really one and from that one source. And that concept can change the entire world, and it can do it very quickly, which is really the essence of the work we're, I think, being asked to do through the Awakening Heaven on Earth platform here, is to help people, to Joel's point, not achieve something or gain something that they didn't have before, but to recognize something that's always been within them, that it's always been there. They've always had it. It's just we have forgotten it. It's a remembering more than anything. So based on that, we're going to jump into our reflection questions here. And we're going to start with, what are kind of the first signs, right? What are the things that, as you've started, and I don't want to assume you consider yourself awakened. I don't think that's a fair. I think some people may be standing just on the outside of awakening, that might be listening to this, and this is the beginning of that process, or it may be that turning point in listening to this podcast that they need to start to sense themselves, their true self. But let's talk about these first signs. So when did you first begin to notice a shift in how you were seeing yourself or the world around you?
The first signs for me, I didn't necessarily notice right away, and I agree that with awakening, generally it's a gradual process. It's not usually something that happens quickly, but it can. And I think based on your last episode, you can kind of vouch for that too. That when something traumatic happens, it can kind of wake you up. It can kind of shake your entire foundation, your entire world. And obviously that happened to me as well with losing Katie. I went from one day being a very quiet and shy kid, who wasn't all that outgoing, could talk to people, but was still very shy, to losing my sister, and then literally the very next day feeling this urge and this desire to actually go into the school the next day and actually stand in front of all of my peers in the auditorium and just talk to them and be with them. That wasn't me. Then later that year, going to the school dance and dancing like somebody who always danced his whole life and was never one to want to do that. Something inside me changed. I became very different that year, and obviously it all stemmed from that one traumatic incident. So that can happen, but I wasn't fully aware of what it was doing inside me. Now, fast forward a handful of years, maybe actually about a decade, and the first signs were not as dramatic. I came across a book that basically piqued my curiosity, and I think that's what a lot of this awakening is. It's not coming to certainty. It's basically arriving at some kind of curiosity. You find something and you follow it, and it becomes more like lights coming on gradually, like a dimmer switch that you just slowly turn it on, and you get certain experiences that basically just start to break things down differently, or you start to see things differently than you did before. And I can say, you mentioned that people listening to this right now may be on the kind of back and forth, not really fully deciding whether or not they are awakening or not. I would say if they're actually finding this podcast, they're probably awakened. They're probably starting to start asking questions and be like, what's this one about? I want to know what these people are saying about it, because they're naturally becoming curious and wanting to know what else is there. And once you start to see these things, and once you start to ask these questions and start going down these paths, I don't think you can unsee it, because I couldn't myself. I don't think I could go back to the way I was before, not having seen or understood what I've come to understand. But then fast forward into COVID, where the world shut down, I could literally feel the energy just shift in the world, and and everyone paused, everyone stopped. And that's when I truly went from having having had years and years of just crazy amount of reading, absorbing information, and going down different rabbit holes and learning things, to where I stopped and I went inside myself. I took the time to sit and meditate and just listen. And that was one of the most beneficial things of having gone through that pandemic, was that it gave me that opportunity to stop and slow down and go inside. And it massively changed my look on life, my understanding of things. So there were a couple different points where I could find where awakening blossomed, but awakening seems to happen on a daily basis.
Well, you had a different experience than I did with Kate, and I had mentioned that, I think, in the podcast last week with Katie's passing, because we have such different experiences and relationships. I can honestly say you were almost instantaneously a different person.
Without a doubt.
And, it was as traumatic and difficult as that experience was and still is in many ways. It's also one of the brightest points that we've had in life. And that may shock again some people for me to say that. But
yeah, it's how do you find that much good in something so bad? Yeah.
But that's, we'll touch on this in later episodes, the concept of alchemizing an experience like that and taking it and through transmutation and fire, which there is a lot of fire that you go through, you can transmute that horrible traumatic experience into something that is precious. And I think, that's what we've been trying to do. That's really the essence of what, again, these teachings are designed to help people with. You also touch on the readings and things that you were doing. A big part of this platform are the recommended readings that we do each week for each episode, for each topic, and the sacred texts that we share, which to me, of all the episodes we do, I think those two are probably my favorite. And I hope that the listeners, if you haven't taken the time to spend some time in those recommended readings and sacred text episodes, will find that they are designed to be, in some cases, they will be the turning point as you listen to those. And we come at it from a very ecumenical point of view. In other words, a universal view. We don't just look at any Christian text. We look at texts across multiple traditions, multiple belief systems. We look at readings that come from psychology and science and philosophy and religion and spirituality. So there's just a common theme and message, and many of those books can be a trigger for a turning point that then helps you turn inward. Really, that's what this episode is saying. Once you have that turning point, the turning is to turn inward. Most everybody wants to look outward for things, solutions.
I'd say you had kind of a turning point as well with one of those books. So
oh gosh, many
books, yeah.
But definitely single books I can point to in my life that were a turning point. So that's why we love to share the recommended readings and hope people will be able to, they'll find one of those books. It's not going to be all of them, just one of them.
Well, one of my turning points, that one, say 14 years ago or so, came from not a religious source at all. It came from a historical fiction novel that just basically was pointing to something actually that was real. It was discussing a book and an idea that was real, and I found it interesting. And it absolutely launched me on a journey that just changed my life, completely changed my life. So
I had a response from the podcast this last week, from someone that we know and have known for a long time, that listened to the podcast and it really resonated with them. And in their communication with me, they shared that one of the key things that really was a turning point for them was a book called How to Change Your Mind, which you and I know, Joel, is by Michael Pollan.
Yeah.
And now he didn't say the name Michael Pollan when he put that in the message. So I responded back to him and I said, hey, Joel and I really are big fans of Michael Pollan's work. And so, just, hey, it's awesome to know. And he sent back another message and said, oh my God, this is probably the most exciting response I've ever gotten to a message. that you
Yeah.
actually know who that person is.
Oh yeah, he's by far one of my favorite authors.
Yeah.
But that person you're referencing there was the very first person who came to me after Katie died. He had heard it before I heard it, and I was the first in our family to know that she had passed. And I walked outside, and the very first person to find me and embrace me was him.
And that's something. Yeah. The synchronicity of all of it, I think, is beautiful, which I also shared with him the concept of synchronicity and Carl Jung. And he said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe we're having this discussion."
That sounds like we need to bring him on. Maybe he wants to talk about some stuff.
I would love to. We'll have to see if he's willing to, because I know he does his own little podcast, which I think is great. So, all right. So we've gone along on this very first question. So Joe, we'll turn it over to you now.
So I think I'm a deeper sleeper than you guys. I don't think I awoke so dramatically. And in fact, I think I'm still a little groggy and waking up a lot slower. I don't know if, I'm fortunate not to have had a traumatic experience to go through there. I don't think, I had a jolt, but I think it's it's definitely a slower awakening, and it's I think it was curiosity here that is bringing it in. And some of the first signs are slowly recognizing that I'm seeing more than others, more empathy, more the ability to do and see how my actions reflect the actions of others, and the ability to cope with that a little bit. So, and I think that kind of happened more and more when I met you guys, to tell you the truth, and the people that I'm with at work, my work family, the Bayern games. And I think those were some of the first signs. And that was my big turning point, I would say, or one of the big turning points for me, because it made me look at things differently. And it wasn't because we were talking about all of this. It just stopped, and we talk about vibration levels. We talk about a lot of different things. And I think it's because I started vibrating at a higher level because of those that I'm around. And I think that's a huge thing. So I wouldn't say that I'm fully awakened. I think that it is a journey, just like for a lot of people. It's a journey that I'm super excited to be on. And it is something that I am actively pursuing. And yes, I'm slightly awakened, right? For sure.
Well, I can help you by saying, yes, you are definitely in the process. And it's, it's beautiful to know that, we have been able to be a part of that. And I think that's an important message for each of us, is that if we will do the inner work and we will resonate ourselves at a higher level, people will feel that. They will see that. They'll be attracted to that, right? In a lot of ways, I think is really the word I'm trying to find. You get attracted to that. You may not understand why you want to be around somebody, but you know that when you're around them, there's something that you feel that is higher, right? And that
absolutely
you want to be in that, and you want to understand that. I mean, I've watched you over the last couple of years, year and a half or so, you're going through a metamorphosis. We've talked about this personally. It's much like the caterpillar that is moving, through the process of becoming a butterfly. That happens internally. It happens inside a covering, a chrysalis, that your body really is a chrysalis. And to watch you transform physically and mentally and spiritually and emotionally And other people are seeing it, and other people are responding to you, and people are going to see you and respond to you that way and be attracted to you and to your higher vibration. To me, it's just this is so important. We talk in our work about outliers, statistical outliers, and a statistical outlier has significantly more weight as an individual data point than any of the other data points in a data set. It pulls them. It pulls the data, the average of data, toward the outlier. Well, that's what we want to be. We can be all caught up in what I call the hairball, right? The world in general is a great big hairball. And I like to be an orbiter. I like to orbit the hairball as an outlier and try to help pull people out of the hairball and, into their own experience. And really, that's what you've described. And what a blessing it is to, for us to have, and none of this is by chance.
No.
We'll touch on this a lot as we go through all this. This is not by chance. Sherri and I talk about this all the time. There is no chance.
We are all here for a reason.
We are here for a reason. We touch each other for reasons, and we touch each other in the right times of our life for reasons. So, all right, Sherri.
Well, for me, I think there's triggers, obviously, in most people's lives that allow you to begin to go through this journey of awakening. And I will say I've had my share of triggers, but also as I look at myself, I'm also still on that journey because I'm still thirsty for understanding purpose. So what is my purpose? What is it that I'm supposed to accomplish? How am I supposed to move people? How am I supposed to ultimately make a difference? So my triggers has allowed me to see life differently, see people differently, realize that everything I see is not always the truth in terms of what my eyes tell me. God has given me internally through this internal awakening that I've experienced in my triggers, an understanding that there is more that to see beyond what I think I'm seeing, that the spirit and God's message moves amongst us, and it comes in different ways and different, like Jeff was saying, nothing's by chance. So in thinking of one trigger, I remember, the loss of my children. And before that, I had met this really nice person. I worked with them and I moved to a different area, but I never really built a really close relationship with them. But I worked with them and thought they were really nice. And I remember getting the news that they lost their twin girls. And I immediately was like, well, I want to do something. I'm going to go to the funeral. How can I be in that moment to help her through that loss? And I remember, just being there, just, hugging her and, just thinking, I don't know what else to do. And so happens that a little over a year later, I was placed in that very same position. I had twins. I lost them the very same way. We buried them. It's the whole thing. And I remember going through that whole journey and with God. Why? I don't understand. And I'm sorry, guys. And I remember that the only person I could reach out to was that person. And they helped me understand. It's like God put them in that place for me to understand how to navigate through that journey, and that their journey was for my journey. And then my journey ended up later to be for someone else's journey. So I began to just really understand more about life and that there's a bigger purpose and that everything that comes our way is for us to learn, to gather, to be more wiser than we were before, to be able to reach people in this world in a different way, in a way in which they need us to be there. And that's kind of my journey. I'm sorry for getting emotional about that, but
I love that you get emotional. I think it's important that we share this vulnerability, right? Everybody who thinks that awakening is a peaceful, beautiful, all butterflies and rainbow experiences, they don't understand it. They don't understand that awakening in many cases can be very dark. It can be quite difficult as we deal with who we really are internally, and so and the experiences that we have to go through in order to awaken can be, as we all know, traumatic, right? Um, we'll touch on another concept later in all the learning called soul contracts and soul families. And I really think in many ways that's what we are. This little group, we're a soul family, and we have been, and we've known each other in previous experiences, and we've chosen to come and be together and to go through things together and learn and teach and share. And it's what creates a bond that goes beyond even blood family, which I think is a beautiful concept if you're open to it. And I'm not going to ask anyone or force anyone to believe in soul contracts or soul families, but I think if you'll take the time to consider it, I think you're going to find that it is beautiful and that it explains a great deal about our human interactions. Another thing about awakening is when you start to recognize that you are not your thoughts. You're the observer of your thoughts. That you're the consciousness behind thoughts. That you have the ability to respond and think and reason around those thoughts. You don't just react, you respond, right? That's the whole concept of this podcast, is to do that, is to stop and think and reason in the space between heaven and earth, in the space between stimulus and response, and to observe what am I thinking? What are these thoughts? Where are these thoughts? Thoughts to me come and go like radio waves. And depending on how you're tuned, your radio dial's tuned, you're going to pick up either higher thoughts or lower thoughts, right? Based on where you're tuning yourself from in a frequency. And I think that's an important part of awakening, is starting to recognize you're the observer of thought. Your thoughts are not you. And you can tune and change the stations that you choose to connect with. I want to jump in, though, to another question here on compassion, because I think our conversation already this morning kind of lends itself towards this question. And that is, as our awareness grows through awakening, a lot of people report that they feel greater compassion toward other people. Have you noticed changes in how you respond to people or situations over time?
Yeah. So compassion can grow naturally when the sense of separation kind of softens and dissolves. You start to see people less like obstacles and more like fellow travelers on this journey. Um, you get less caught up in defending who you are and what you are, and you start to see their struggles that they're carrying and relate, and you can start to become compassionate towards them and come from a place of understanding and want to help and yeah. So it basically it definitely it awakens you to all the interconnectedness and the fact that the separation between us and each other and us and God is not an actual reality. It's something that our minds basically create and basically make us feel separate when there is no actual separateness.
I feel that I've had a big level of compassion all the time. I've been very compassionate with a lot of people, but I find that it gets easier to put myself in their shoes and look at it from their point of view as this process continues. It's something that I've always been able to do, but it happens easier now. And it happens on even another level. It happens not only with people now, but with animals and insects and even the earth itself, where I didn't consider it in the past. So now it's like everything that I feel is living and around us. I used to have a phobia with spiders to the point where if one crawled out on the dashboard, I wanted to jump out of a moving vehicle. It was pretty bad. And now it doesn't affect me really at all, to the point where I don't really want to reach down and put my hand, and have them crawl on me, but I definitely have no urge at all to kill a spider or to have it, removed from my presence.
Well, what you're describing there is, again, the difference between reacting and responding.
Yeah.
You're more responding to the spider in a less emotional way, right? With a little different understanding, and instead of just reacting, which would have been jumping out of a moving car, which would not be a good idea.
Well, and again, logical Joe knew that was not a good thing to do. Terrified, petrified Joe just wanted nothing to do with that spider at all.
Well, you've also been talking a lot about how you feel like anger is directed toward other people and what other people do or what other people trigger in you in most cases, right?
Yeah.
And how you feel that, and some of that is coming through your Reiki training that you're doing, where one of the precepts is, just for today, I will not anger.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's noticed by other people as well. I was at dinner with my mom earlier this week, and even she said, there's not as much that bothers you anymore, is there? It's like, I work at that. But you are right. I don't anger as easily as I used to. And she said, yeah, I've been noticing that, which it's a good feeling to have somebody else notice that as well. But she's right. I don't get angered quite as easily as I once did. And that's such a good thing, not only to hear, but also, it's a great feeling to not be angered as easy.
So compassion doesn't always have to be toward other people either. It can be toward yourself.
Absolutely.
Be compassionate toward yourself.
That's a big one too. That sometimes is required first before you can handle being compassionate towards others.
And not easy, not always easy.
Well, I think for me, the compassion is just part of who I am. It's a core belief that kind of drives me. It drives my emotional disposition, how I interact with people. I think that having gone through different stages through life and becoming a little more aware, not only of myself, but people around me, allows me to interact with the world a little differently. Doesn't mean I don't get disappointed in behavior and responses, but it means that I'm coming from a place where I realize that other people have other triggers and drivers that they're dealing with in their lives. That if I believe that the core of who some individuals are is always coming from a good place, that I just have to understand how to reach that. And I think the best way of reaching that is through compassion. I've always was always taught that you can get more from kindness. And so that's kind of been the guiding light for me. And I feel like in some aspects that my purpose in life is to spread kindness.
You know, the fruits of the Spirit that are taught in the Christian scriptures are love, joy, peace, long suffering or patience, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and temperance or self control. And in order to be compassionate, you have to exhibit those spiritual characteristics. And as you become more aware of that, you are spirit first. You are spirit. The characteristics of your true being are love, joy, peace, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance, patience. All of that tends then to expand from you. And I agree with Joel that you've got to feel that for yourself, or it's going to be very difficult for you to really feel that for other people, because you're not separate from each other. You really are the same. And love is the glue that unites us. That's why the next season for this podcast next year is going to be all based on love, the second book in the series. And it's not just love, it's unconditional love, which is a totally different thing than what most people realize. And so, you know, for me, compassion, it's taken me a long time to not be judgmental. It's hard to be compassionate for people if you're judging them. Discernment, again, we've talked about in the past, is different. It doesn't mean that I'm excusing people's behavior, to your point, Sherri, but I need to recognize what the behavior is and then ask the question, well, why might they be behaving that way? What in them might be causing that? Because typically what we see on the outside with people is a long developed response or reaction. And it's not usually who that person really is. You've got to dig deeper to find out who they really are and realize that we all have the same common characteristics and source. So compassion causes you to slow down. When things happen and you get triggered and you don't just react, you truly do take that space between that trigger or whatever it is that is igniting something in you to stop and think, what should my response be? And I believe that as we awaken, as we continue to grow, what we'll find is that our initial response should be compassion, not anger, not. And when people see you respond in a compassionate way, it de-escalates things. A calm response will create a calm response. A very aggressive response will generate an aggressive response. And I can tell you right now, just based on how the world is functioning, this world needs compassion. And I hope that this message resonates with people in the world, that we need to stop and be more understanding and compassionate of ourselves and others around us, and not just respond angrily and bitterly. And because it's all it does is it tends to escalate into what we see happening actually in the world today. And it's unfortunate. And I think and here's the thing, it doesn't have to be this way. The world does not have to be this way. It is, we make it this way. We create this reality of what we think we're seeing. So another big part of awakening often involves us questioning beliefs or assumptions that we've held for a long time, deep beliefs in some cases. And we all know what happens when we assume assumptions, right? Have there been ideas or perspectives that you've had or held for a long time, in some cases lifetime, that you've had to release as your understanding and your awakening evolves?
Yeah, we like to cling to old stories. We like to cling to identities that we've created of ourselves. And, you know, what I mentioned before, that before my sister passed, I was a very shy, reserved kid who didn't go out of his way to be the center of attention or to be outgoing and social. And that changed right away. I became more outgoing. I became a very different person. Um, and the same goes with the journey that I went on not long after that, when it came to my beliefs. Growing up as in a Christian household, like we did, um, that was the identity, that I was a Christian. Everyone tells walks around and says I'm a Christian. I'm this. But then I started to ask questions. I'm always asking questions. I never ever stop. And so I started to ask questions of things that didn't make sense to me or didn't feel right to me. And I eventually loosened that, and I started to learn from other religious backgrounds or other spiritual teachings, and finding that they all were saying the same things. So I let go of my old story to say that I was just a Christian, even though all this learning reinforced and actually reinvigorated my beliefs in what some of that Christian religion taught. But I was no longer identified to that old story, that I was just that. And I mean, we choose to be this, we can choose to be different day in and day out. And that's one of my favorite things that like Alan Watts would talk about, it. You have a choice every single day, every moment. You're not the same person you were even yesterday. And I can even vouch for that. I got blood work back yesterday saying that my cholesterol was high. So today I've already made decisions to do things differently. I'm not the same person I was yesterday. You know, it literally can be that simple. Day in and day out, you can choose to be somebody different than you were before. And that's hard for some people because it's comfortable to just feel like you know who you are. But that certainty limits you. The curiosity is what opens things up. And it's hard because, but think of it this way. So the ability to entertain a thought without having to fully accept it. So basically, you get a thought that, can I do this, or is that right, or does it feel right? It may resonate with you. It may not. You have that choice to go either way. But stay curious. Quit being so certain that you have all the answers, that you have that you are this person, that you can't be anybody but this person, because you change every single day. You are not the same person day in and day out. But our mind tricks us and makes us think that this is me. I am Joel. I am a pharmacist. I am nothing else but these things, and that's not true. So we like to hold on to old stories that we've created, which isn't always bad. It's just if we don't allow ourselves to grow out of those old stories and into something new.
So I had convinced myself that, and a lot of these things are stuff that I put on myself. These are self-made shackles, right? Um, and one of them was that meditation was useless, right? And that there's no way I could sit still for more than 5 minutes without music on, without a video game, or without a book in my hand. No way I could do anything like that. And here I am now daily sitting for, 15 to 45 minutes. And it's a wonderful feeling. It's restorative. It's educational. I mean, for me, it's a wonderful thing. I had myself convinced that I was always going to be fat, that I could not lose this weight. I had been a big guy for so long, and everything I tried, I could not lose weight. I could stay stable, but none of it would come off. And I, finally, it started to do that. Somebody told me, think of yourself as thin. You have the power to do this. And that was a big catalyst for me to start thinking that way. And lo and behold, I've lost 100 pounds since that statement. It's taken years to do it, but I've done it. It's a mindset. Somebody started teaching me about vibration level and started thinking about that. And I always knew that, a smile can change a lot, right? But to actually see it work and to start thinking about that and watching it happen, I try to raise the vibration level everywhere I go now. You can call it whatever you want. You don't have to believe that it's a vibration level inside of you. Call it what you want, but smile where you go. Think positively where you go. Bring a better feeling wherever you go, and watch and see what happens. And it is amazing. You can change a sour mood in yourself, in other people that you're having a communication with, just in a room, go outside and watch what happens when you think positively and smile. Watch what happens around you. It is phenomenal. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that I've had to let go of and start thinking about, and it's a good thing. And I think we all do that daily, weekly, yearly. We're here to learn. And in order to learn, you oftentimes have to let go of what you thought was right and go at it with an open mind.
I guess for me, society has always told me that I was different. So I walk in that thin for however many years I've been on this earth. I won't disclose that. But society looks at me as different. But me internally, and the way I was raised and how I feel about myself, I know that God has made all of us the same. We're all made in His image. We bleed the same. We feel the same. We hurt the same. We're all the same. And so that has been a guiding light for me as I continue to navigate through, various challenges that are presented to me on this earth. I know that spiritually, and that awakening of me walking in my faith and understanding that I'm the same to God, that He's going to reach and touch and mold me to do the things that, you know, His will is put out for me to do, just like He would do anything, just like He would do for any of His children. So, and I also wanted to just quickly make a comment about, just learning to being in that moment where you're caring and you're loving people and you're understanding where they are in life, and you're putting that work in to do that, to know that people have various triggers, and you just have to like slow down and really understand that. in the moment, that it also feeds very heavily into your ability to forgive. And forgiveness is big. It allows you to grow internally, um, for yourself, and it also helps you as you're maneuvering through relationships with others. And I feel like a lot of that comes from self awareness, being able to be in the moment and slowing down the dialogue to understand that we all have triggers and things, but also through that understanding, you're able to and that realization that you're able to forgive. And I think forgiveness is huge. So,
Sherri, there's a book called A Course in Miracles, was created by two psychologists. The one received this message through it was just given to her. She channeled it, really, is how you would describe it, right? That just a lot like how this whole awakening series has come to me. She received this in a download, this book, this content. And the essence of that book, A Course in Miracles, says that miracles come from radical forgiveness. The reason that we don't heal, the reason that we experience a great deal of illness and sickness and dis-ease is because of a lack of forgiveness. And forgiveness isn't for the other person, and it doesn't say that what they did is okay. Forgiveness is for you. It being angry and bitter at someone over something is like taking poison and hoping they die from it. Right? You taking the poison and hoping they die. And forgiveness releases so much. Now, I'm going to tie this back to my response to this particular letting go of old stories. I've had to let go of a lot of old stories. The older you are, the more stories you have to let go of. And anyone who's watched me over my lifetime, and especially over these last 20-some years, know that I have gone through a lot of change. I think most all of it is for the better. And I believe it's been healthy. There's still a lot to do, a lot of change to go through. In fact, this morning, one of the things that I was meditating on is the fact that I'm going through another major period of significant change. I'm not the person I was. And some people around you will be able to handle that, and some people around you won't be able to handle that. And that's okay. But I had an experience this week where I had given someone a copy of the book, A Course in Miracles. Someone I love and care about very much, someone who I felt very strongly was fairly open to learning and receiving things and considering thoughts that might challenge old stories that they've held. Well, one of the old stories, and I've had to let go of this, is that the Christian Bible is absolute truth. You can't question it. You don't say anything about it that would cause anyone not to think that it is absolute authority with no error. There's just no way you can question it. Well, I had given this person a copy of the book, A Course in Miracles, and they brought it back to me this week and left a note, which is fine, that said, hey, I really haven't read it. I've just kind of looked through it, but I'm not comfortable. I'm not comfortable with this book. I believe the Bible is what is my one and only guide, and that I don't feel comfortable that this book is appropriate or that it's right. And I'm thinking to myself again, okay, how and why would this be the response? And it has to do with we've been conditioned to think in certain ways and have certain beliefs and certain assumptions that if you question them or if you challenge them, they go into fear. They're afraid to question. the foundations that they had stood on up to that point. Now, it's just interesting that the other major lesson contained in A Course in Miracles is that we all have a choice in life. You either choose love or you choose fear. And A Course in Miracles says choose love. Now, I've read the Christian Bible many times, and there is absolutely nothing that I have read in A Course in Miracles that's teaching choose love over fear and radically forgive people so that you can heal. That message is the same message that's in those supposed Christian scriptures or Bible. And because I'm able to see that because I let go. I let go of the fact or this underlying belief that this is truth and anything else outside of that is to be questioned as truth. And what I'm finding is that it's fear. It's a fear to let go of that. I went through that. I can tell you when Joel first exposed me to a couple of things here, not that I wasn't leaning that way, because I was, but that doesn't mean there's not fear, right? I mean, he mentioned earlier about, books that he shared with me that were turning points in understanding and opening up mind and thinking. And as much as in that last episode, I talked about Katie's passing being a turning point, Joel's also been a great turning point. I've learned more from my kids at this point, than just about anybody. And I think that's awesome. I mean, even though I'm their father, and I think they should know that I'm more intelligent and smarter all the time than they are. I'm not. See, that also is something I've had to let go of. An underlying belief or assumption that I'm smarter than my kids are.
But no, you're exactly right. You hit on the head talking about that person. They would have to let go of an identity and a belief system that they've built their life around, and that's scary.
It's very scary, and I love them, and I know that they are where they are. I'm not judging. I'm just discerning. Why would I see this, and why did we get this response? And then, for me, do I even respond to that?
No.
I don't. It's not up to me to respond to that. At least I know at this point.
No, you've planted the seed.
Hmm.
You've planted a seed, and it's up to them to. I mean, it's perfectly fine if they. The problem I have with, I've had these same situations before where I've given a book where I felt like somebody may be open to reading it. It's not to say that I'm trying to change their belief system or say that I'm right and they're wrong. That's not it. It's more. If you can't read something that isn't your scripture, and if you can't read it with an open mind and be curious about it, and then basically it reinforce what you already believe, then there's a reason for that. And that uncomfortable feeling is basically showing you kind of the weak points in your belief systems or in what you're understanding. It's not necessarily a bad thing, and it's not dangerous, but people think it is because it tears their identity. But that's no different than the entire New Testament story. It's exactly what Jesus was doing. He was questioning the authority of the time, saying, you're not quite understanding what it is it's trying to teach you, and they killed him for it. So,
well, because it's totally disruptive. It generates people respond aggressively when they're in a state of fear, right?
Very much, yeah.
And
when you become defensive, if someone becomes defensive when you have these conversations or share this stuff with them, they're not ready.
No, and again, that's okay. You have to know where people are and understand, at what's your point. But I took the position myself personally. Okay, what's the worst thing that's going to happen if I consider something that might seem to be different? All I'm going to do is either convince myself that what I believed before was either accurate or not, or I'm going to learn something new and get to a better or higher point.
Yeah.
If the Bible is a plumb line that most people have set for what truth is and what is not, then when you read something that's not consistent with that, you have a choice. It's a choice, right? So I think it's important that people will not even open their mind. The person didn't even read the book.
That's the part that bothers me sometimes in these situations. It's not. again, it's not a right and wrong thing. It's just be open, be curious, be willing to actually look into something other than what you already think you know for sure. Because
Well,
we
and
don't all have the answers.
exactly. So, the other thing is that A Course in Miracles, by the way, if you're not familiar with it as you're listening to this, is not even considered, it's considered a spiritual book, but it's really more of a psychology book. The people involved in the creation of A Course in Miracles were psychologists. And it comes at spirituality from a very psychological standpoint. And, take it or leave it. But it doesn't hurt. This is what leads to book burning.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? This is that kind of a belief that this is the only thing I can focus on that's truth. Anything that questions that is bad. I'm going to burn that because I'm not comfortable with that, because my comfort is in this, right? Then you are now controlled by that. And I don't think that was the intent. Joe, you have a comment?
Yeah. Well, but I think too, though, this is just a position where they're not comfortable with it. They're not ready for it. So,
Exactly.
I think, that's perfectly fine in this situation. And I think it's a good place to be right now. I mean, it doesn't sit with everybody. So, and
well, know, Joe, as well as anybody, that I tend to be a seed planter.
Absolutely. Yep.
And with great patience, will wait 2, 3, 4 or more years to watch something develop.
Yep.
So
yeah, and that's the wonderful thing, though, and I that's what I love about this podcast and the material that is out there now as well. Right, this will resonate with some people, and that is fantastic. And for others, it's not their cup of tea, right? So that's perfectly
Take
fine.
It or leave it.
And everybody has their choice to sit here, listen, get what they can out of it, and maybe a seed will be planted, and people will start looking into things and learn something from it, and other people just aren't ready yet. And you know what? Awesome.
That's awesome.
That is fantastic.
I agree.
So many people will describe awakening as becoming more aware or attentive to inner guidance or intuition, that sixth sense, that gut feel, what I believe in is really evidence of the God in you and God's influence in you. How do you recognize that voice inside yourself? How do you recognize, is this my intuition speaking to me?
I think it's kind of that gut feeling that we talk about. I think that intuition and inner guidance is just your soul talking to you, but you can only generally hear it when you've quieted the mind. So the mind is noisy. The mind is constantly talking, and it takes calming that a little bit and actually paying attention to inner voice and the inner guidance inside of you. I mean, your mind is, it's a great servant but a terrible master. So it's not one to always listen to. It's a great tool. It helps us tremendously, provides us a lot of different things, but the inner guidance and the inner comes from inner stillness. And that's the challenge with meditation, is that while you're sitting there being still, the mind just constantly moves and is going here and here and here, and you just got to realize that you're the observer behind that, calm it down, and then you can find that inner guidance from stillness. And when you do find it, it's amazing what can come up out of that stillness. Some profound insights can come from just being still.
I think this is individual and different for everybody, because I think some people just get it. And I think that's awesome for them, because I didn't. I'm a lot like you too, Joel, where I have to try to calm my mind a lot in order to start seeing it. But some people just have that intuition. Some of them just have that ability to feel and to see some of this stuff, I think. And some people are born with it, and some people, it's generational even, from some of the things I'm reading. And what a gift, right? But it did not come easy for me, and it's not. I mean, I will occasionally maybe see a glimpse or maybe be able to calm my mind to start feeling something, but it is not easy for me. So I think it's depends on who you are, how you start to calm your mind, how you start to be able to meditate. So it's kind of an individual thing, I believe, and that you have to figure out what works best for you. So I think going about it with an open mind, and sitting through, some podcasts, learning what you can learn, and finding out how to do that, and find out what works best for you. So yeah, and I'm not real sure if there is a direct way to be able to do that.
Interesting. I I read something around thinking about your thinking. So find that to be interesting. But for me, I, it's a it's a gut feeling uh, that you just feel when something's right, and that kind of has been my guide. But I have find myself, but in order to even get to that point, sometimes that's not always the gut feeling is not always the first kind of reaction. There is a moment and as I'm reflecting in myself that I'm thinking about my thinking. And I tell you what, that's a process. Um, but but if you learn to be still and figure out how to quiet the noise from the outside and even your thoughts, that for me, I think you end up, really getting to a point where you're driving those things from your gut, and it just at that point it feels right. It feels good. It's a good feeling.
It resonates with you, right?
Yeah.
And resonation again. You know that you're tuning into something that just feels clear and correct and vital. I'm an INTJ personality type. If you're familiar with the Myers-Briggs, Carl Jung's series of type, and we're big fans of Carl Jung. But as an introverted intuitive, those are two of the rarest elements in personality. Most everybody's extroverted. 75% of people are extroverted versus introverted. And about the same percentage are sensory. In other words, they take in information through their senses versus intuitive, someone who takes in information through their sixth sense. So it's, again, about a 75-25. So if you happen to be an introverted intuitive, lucky me, right? I'm an introverted intuitive. You're a pretty rare type. And being different sometimes is a challenge, but it's also a blessing. I tend to be very internally focused, the way I think and process, and I like quiet, which allows me to hear that inner voice, which is still and small and quiet, maybe a little more than some others, but it doesn't mean I don't question it. Is that really, whose voice is that? What voice is that? Is that really the God source in me, or is it my ego? Which of those two is talking to me when I'm hearing this guidance? And I do have criteria that I use when I'm hearing it, because I can tell you the messages are different. If the guidance I'm getting is based, again, on love, joy, peace, long-suffering or patience, gentleness, goodness, meekness, temperance, I know the source of that. Those are the characteristics of the God source in me. If I get things that make me angry or jealous or cause me to be envious or to have an inordinate desire for something, I know that's my ego. I heard a really great message the other day, because so much of Carl Jung's theory of psychological type, in fact, a lot of his philosophies, are based on Gnostic beliefs, gnosis. And Within the
Yep.
Gnostic beliefs, there's a concept called the demiurge, which is the lesser god that that many people believe is responsible for physical creation. And the demiurge is the ego. It really is the ego. It's that false god, that false being, that false element of our being that we think is our true self, and it's not. And, just learning to discern, again, between the two voices, because the two voices definitely come from different perspectives, have been very helpful for me, at least, as I'm going through this awakening period. And it is a lifetime experience. That's the next part we'll touch on here before we bring this to a close, is the fact that awakening is not a one-time event. Awakening is an ongoing event. It doesn't stop. Once you start, or you recognize it, or you're in it, it doesn't stop. You're never there fully, right? So, do you see awakening as a destination, or do you see it as an ongoing process? I think that's an important question.
Yeah, it's absolutely an ongoing process. It's a daily process. It's a minute by minute process. It unfolds constantly, and I'm 100% guilty of failing day in and day out, moment to moment. And I don't respond the way I know I should, and that's okay. I have to give myself grace. I have to give myself compassion to realize that I'm not perfect. This is still something I'm going through and still learning how to handle and do better. But that's kind of the point. That's what this is all about. It's not about passing the test. It's not about perfection. And I think that's a thought that gets in people's head, that there's got to be this. We've got to be perfect. Get that out of your mind. We're human. Embrace your humanity. It's okay that we are human. Live it fully. Be okay with that. And that's one thing that I think that a lot of spiritual teachings, either tell you to do that, or some of them are condemning of being human, and it causes problems either way. Sometimes you are both. You are a spiritual being in a human body. It's okay that you fail. It's okay that you have to go through this, and you're learning. That's the whole point of this existence, and it is ongoing. And the more you peel things back, the deeper you go, the more beautiful things can be. And we see, like you said earlier, that life doesn't have to be this way, and we have the choice, and we have the ability to make changes with ourselves, and therefore throughout the entire world.
I agree 100%. 100%. And, we're here to live this life and to experience these experiences. And yeah, you're going to make mistakes, and we're going to learn from them. And that's what we're here to do. And it's what a wonderful chance to be able to do this. So, yeah.
And so I have to ditto everyone on the podcast with the same thing. I mean, there's no race to perfection, right? I think God's plan, or the spiritual plan for all of us, is that everything in life that we are encountering is a opportunity for us to learn, for us to grow, and for us to impact people that we care about, meet people, be in that space for others that that need that at the time, and that comes from our journeys and the things that we learn, and the mistakes we make and learn from them. And it's a evolving process that I feel like I'm in every day, and I'm very grateful for it, actually.
Well, this particular question is applicable to most any religious belief. I know Christianity, some people have boiled down Christianity to an event. You say this, you make this prayer, that one event, everything after that really doesn't matter as much as that one event. Well, no, I'm sorry. It's way beyond that. It's a decision you make every day to follow, to align yourself with the divine, And, I'm thankful that I think, are building with the Awakening Heaven on Earth platform a holistic approach to this. That's why the Living Heaven on Earth podcast and the Living Heaven on Earth book that will be coming out, that is designed as a companion to all of these lessons to give you daily practice, to constantly keep you every day in a position where you can remember who you truly are. You have to do it every day or you will forget. You will forget. It's a constant vigilance to remember who we are, because the world has got such strong power and energy to cloud your thoughts and vision and confuse you as to who you really are. So all this works together. The 3 podcasts, the Awakening Heaven on Earth podcast, which is really the foundational principles that we are coming to see. Different practices are in that. You've got this podcast, which then takes that content and we talk about it and we reason on it and we think about it. And then you have the Living Heaven on Earth podcast where, there are daily practices that you can use to help make this a regular part of your life. And remember, I think it's important for us to recognize that awakening is not about becoming somebody new. It's about remembering who we are and have been all along. It's always been inside of us. We've just forgotten it. So as we bring this conversation to a close, it's really worth remembering that awakening rarely happens all at once. If it does, then I can tell you, you are going to probably have some very difficult psychological reactions and responses and physical responses to that. It has to happen over a longer period of time. And more often it unfolds very quietly through moments of awareness that you gain, reflection that you have, compassion you experience, and curiosity. I love the concept we've been talking about of just be curious. What's the Ted Lasso statement, Joel?
Be curious, not judgmental.
Yes. I mean, how brilliant is that? So Joel, Joe, Sherri, thanks for sharing your insights again and all of your experiences today. And to those of you that are listening, I hope this conversation invites you to notice even a small moment of awareness within your own life that may be the beginning of awakening itself. So I appreciate you spending your time with us this morning. And with that, the space between continues. As we come to a close, remember that this journey continues in many expressions. This podcast is part of a family of partner podcasts. Awakening Heaven on Earth. The space between heaven and earth and Living Heaven on Earth are 3 companion podcasts exploring spiritual awakening from complementary perspectives. Awakening Heaven on Earth offers the core teachings and mystical reflections on unity, love, and conscious living. The space between creates room for dialogue, reflection, and lived conversation around those teachings. Living Heaven on Earth focuses on basic spiritual practices that help embody these insights in daily life. Together, they form a unified journey of understanding, experience, and integration, inviting listeners to remember their connection with the divine, with one another, and with the living world. You can find all of them available on the same podcast streaming platforms wherever you listen. And if music helps carry these teachings deeper into the heart, the Unity, Awakening Heaven on Earth album is available on all major music streaming services as a musical companion to this journey. Wherever you engage, through listening, reflection, conversation, or music. May it gently remind you you are not separate. You belong to the one life, and heaven is already unfolding within you. Until next time, walk gently, love deeply, and embody heaven on earth.